gotten really frustrated with some things I've been seeing just by accident. You know, sometimes you get the feed of you know, what people recommend, the videos that YouTube recommends or Facebook recommends or whatever. And one of these videos I clicked on just out of sheer, I guess, boredom, ended up turning into a house of horrors. It's not, I'll say this, I already knew that it was a problem. I already knew that way too many people did this. I already knew that it was a global issue everywhere with pet keepers, especially reptile pet keepers. But just to see it in a video that's supposed to be like not about that at all. It's supposed to be about, you know, look how cool my snake is. And I'm just seeing that poor snake, how sad its life is because of the tiny cage and the just depressing. It was filled with literally the substrate. All it was paper towels, and it was just a tiny cage with a extremely tiny water dish that it's like, you know, not even big enough for the snake to soak its skin in when it needs to shed, which is very alarming because its shed can get stuck if the water dish is not big enough for the snake to get in and help itself shed, especially the kind of snake that was in this video, which was a ball python. Ball pythons need a lot of extra humidity. Yes, you can cover the top, but really ideally, they also need that big water dish. And it's just, you know, there was no plants in there, just a tiny ass water dish, a tiny ass one little plastic hide, and some paper towels. That would be like shoving someone in a 3-foot by 8-foot tall closet with no light and blank walls, and that's their entire life. It really pisses me out. You're not even giving the snake anything to rub up against, except for maybe that little hide that you have to get it shed off. There are things that aren't just with husbandry. There are things that aren't just humane, but they're issues. But they're issues for the actual health of the animal. You know, that the animal can actually have health issues if you don't give them what they actually need. It's not just about being humane, but obviously that's a big issue as well. Just the way that you're gonna treat that animal, that's its forever home. You know, the only time it ever gets out of there is when you pick it up and handle it. You know, it's just it's not morally right, and the physical health of the animal is going to suffer as well as the mental health. It's going to be extreme psychological, but also very bad physical suffering the longer it lives in an environment like that. So the video that I'm doing today is just going to show you, you know, some ideas of how to make enrichment, but also just a general video on, you know, what it should look like, what your terrarium should look like, no matter whether you have frogs or snakes or lizards or toads or whatever it is that you're keeping in that terrarium. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So we're going to start out with our corn snake cage, our smaller corn snake cage. I would not get anything smaller than this. I really wouldn't for adult corn snakes, and you might as well, in my opinion, get something that locks, you know, not only there, anywhere there's a door, but also, you know, that it locks from the top. If the animal gets out, you might not ever find it, and it might die of dehydration and starvation because you can't find it. This is a fairly new setup, so all the plants in here are fairly new, and these actually right here haven't even uncurled yet. It's just barely a sprig there. And you know, as they grow up, they'll start to kind of go on these fake rocks I have in here. Of course, that's not necessary, but the cage actually came with a background, and look at how thick those are. I mean, it was a solid background that was going to go, that took away 3 whole inches of the cage, and I was going to just throw it away, but I thought, well, if I break these rocks up, if I break this background up and just make it rocks, and then glue it to the back of it, actually that provides enrichment. They can crawl in it, on top of it, you know, and that actually isn't a waste of space that way. When talking about hides, any hide is good as long as it's, you know, appropriate for the size, but I've found that cork bark is every snake's favorite hide, at least every snake I've ever owned. That one right there is just a fake rock resin hide. You want to make sure that their water dish is big enough that they can soak themselves in it when they need to shed. And of course, we're talking about snakes. We're talking about a snake cage because this is a corn snake cage, but of course, every animal, every different species has different needs. It is bioactive. Under here, we've got, you can't see them, but we've got some isopods. If you're worried about your critter eating the isopod, typically if you have a flat piece of cork bark like that, the isopods will choose that over a cork bark hide because they know it's safer, and they're much less likely to prey on them if they're underneath there. They don't even know they're there. Isopods don't bother the snake. All they do is keep husbandry in here. They keep fungus and bacteria from, you know, growing on things. They actually help the plants stay healthier. They'll even eat snake shed and snake poo. If there's not enough for them to eat here, though, naturally, you do have to supplement them with some isopod food. And that be the case, you don't want the isopod food anywhere near where your pet's going to go. You want that kind of hidden, like maybe underneath the cork bark or something, to where only the isopods can get to it. A bioactive cage for a corn snake isn't really necessary because, you know, they're very low maintenance as far as husbandry goes. You're still going to have to clean the cage no matter what. But for the next cage I'm going to show you, it actually is very important that we have some kind of bioactive setup. So this is Ember. He's got himself in a pretty strange spot, but for whatever reason he really likes that hide. It was his baby hide, and I haven't taken it out just because he likes it so much. Wait until he can't fit in it at all anymore, and then I'll take it out. No, he doesn't need a water dish this big right now, but it saves money to get the size that he will need as an adult. As an adult, he's going to need this big of a water dish, trust me, to be able to fully soak in there and get his shed off. See something crawling around in there? That's one of the isopods. Ball pythons need a very humid environment. You have to cover their cage with either tinfoil or plexiglass or a towel or something. Not completely, but you know, part or most of the way. Still get enough ventilation in there, but enough to keep the humidity in. Otherwise, they'll get stuck shed, they'll get dehydrated. Ball pythons need a lot of humidity. What else comes with humidity? Bacteria and fungus. And that is why we have the isopods in here. They just kind of help keep all of that nasty stuff out of there. Snakes can actually get a fungal infection, even die from it. So you don't want that in there. We have a fake branch, but you can also get a real branch. This is just something I've had forever for kind of enrichment for him to crawl on. And you'll notice that all the hides, or almost all the hides, are connected. They're pretty much just cork bark except for that one there that's resin. Snakes usually tend to choose cork bark. They like it a lot. It's a cheap, easy hide, and sometimes you can find bark like this in the woods as long as it doesn't have anything on it that would harm the snake, fungus or anything like that. Getting them just from the woods might be okay, but cork bark's definitely going to be safer and cleaner. So anyway, they all kind of connect. They don't have to, but that gives them the opportunity. If they want to go from point A to point B, you know, all the way on the other end, it connects. You know, so they don't have to expose themselves to get from one end of the cage to the other. It doesn't have to go all the way from one end to the other. Ash has only got one. This is our other corn snake cage. She's only got one. Really long log, and then it kind of opens up a very short distance to some other smaller hides that are connected. And then she's got, because corn snakes like to climb on things a lot, she's got, instead of those little rocks, she's got just some fake vines. And then one little rock in the back. The plants also provide a little bit of enrichment and oxygen, just extra fresh air. They don't need it, but if your house is well ventilated, it doesn't really matter. But, I like the look and the feel of, the environmental feel of real plants better. And we also do have isopods in her cage as well. She's got a water dish as well. Her cage is actually a foot longer about than the other corn snake cage. No, it's not necessary, but for an adult corn snake, this actually isn't too big. For a baby, it might be a little overwhelming, but for an adult corn snake, especially a female, which I believe are longer. There's a controversy that males may be bigger than females for corn snakes, but my veterinarian actually said that the females were bigger. And longer. So I'm going to go with what my veterinarian says on that one, not with the internet, which makes sense because that's how most species work. Most snake species, the female's always the bigger one. So, it makes sense that if you have a female corn snake, or this would be really good for a rat snake. Rat snakes are really long, so it'd be a nice big long cage for a rat snake as well. It's the same length as actually the ball python's cage, same exact dimensions. If I could have found a cage that was longer or wider, I would have for Ember, but I couldn't. This is the ball python I'm talking about, and it's not necessary to get anything bigger than this. This is perfectly fine, especially for a male ball python, which is smaller. If I had a female ball python though, I would probably reconsider the size. If I so happen to have a female ball python, I would imagine, in my personal opinion, that this would be a little too small. But that's bigger than what a lot of people say is the minimum for even a female. So I guess it depends. But you don't have to do all this fancy stuff, and really most of the stuff, decorations I put in here were dirt cheap. So even though it looks fancy, it was very cheap. The most expensive thing actually was just the cage itself, and there's no way around that. To get something that locks, that's secure, that's safe, to get something that's big enough, you're going to have to spend some money unless you make it from scratch, which, obviously most of us aren't going to know how to do. So making it bioactive, making it with enrichment and with, enough space, ultimately not only makes the psychological health of the animal better, but the physical health of the animal. They will live longer and they will be a lot stronger physically if you do what is necessary to give them the proper setup and care.